Grab a coffee, or something stronger. Because this isn't a story I tell often. I'm Sarah Thompson, almost 60. Still living in the same quiet Chicago suburb with its trimmed lawns and polite block parties where everyone brings the same damn casserole. For most of my life, I was the funny one. The woman who could ease any awkward silence with a quick joke or a smart remark. I thought it was a gift. Turns out, in a marriage, it can be a weapon. One you don't realize you're using until it's too late. Daniel, my ex-husband, wasn't flashy. He wasn't fireworks or grand declarations. He was steady, solid, the kind of man who remembers anniversaries and the day your dad died, and quietly shows up with your favorite tea without saying a word. He was goodness in the form of a man. But sometimes, when life is calm and kind, you start to wonder if that calm is love. Or just quiet. And one night, I opened my mouth and said something that cracked everything open. But that steadiness, sometimes in my less charitable moments, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep, it felt, well, a little beige, predictable. Compared to the Technicolor drama of Ryan, Daniel felt like settling. A safe harbor, yes, but was it exciting? That little worm of doubt would wriggle occasionally, but I always pushed it down. I loved Daniel, truly. He was a good man, my good man. Until one careless moment, one stupid joke, where I let that worm out for everyone to see. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary dinner. The whole clan was there. Siblings, cousins, spouses, grandkids running underfoot. The restaurant was buzzing, wine was flowing freely, laughter echoing off the walls. My sister's husband, John, who's a decent guy but perpetually attached to his phone, was wandering around filming little snippets. "For a family memory reel," he announced cheerfully, panning his phone across the table. Innocent enough, right? Someone, I think it was my Aunt Carol, asked the age-old question. "So, Sarah, Daniel, remind us how you two lovebirds met." I launched into the story, the one I'd told countless times, how I was fresh off the messy breakup with Ryan, feeling bruised and uncertain, and how Daniel, who was a friend of a friend, was just there, patient, kind, persistent in his quiet way. It was a sweet story, really, but as I got to the end, flushed with wine and wanting to land a funny closing line, I gestured towards Daniel with a theatrical flourish. Honestly, I leaned in conspiratorially, my voice loud enough for the whole table to hear. After Ryan? Let's just say Daniel wasn't exactly my first choice. I let out a bright, breezy laugh, expecting the usual wave of chuckles. And it came. Most of the table laughed along, but my eyes flickered to Daniel. His smile was there, fixed in place, but it didn't touch his eyes. There was a flicker, a minuscule tightening around his mouth, gone almost instantly. But I saw it. Across the table, John's phone was still vaguely pointed in our direction. He was probably aiming at my cousin's kid doing something cute, but we were in the frame. A tiny alarm bell went off somewhere in my brain. Kidding! Totally kidding, honey. I quickly squeezed Daniel's arm, maybe a little too hard. He knows he's the luckiest man alive, right? I tried to make it playful, nudge him back into the easy rhythm we usually had. He gave a small nod, managing a slightly more convincing smile. "Of course," he murmured. The conversation moved on, swept away by talk of the grandkids and my dad's questionable dance moves from the wedding video. But something had shifted. The air felt different. Later that night, curled up in bed, the usual comfortable silence felt charged. "You okay?" I whispered, reaching out to touch his shoulder. He didn't flinch, but he didn't lean into the touch either. "Fine, Sarah, just tired." His voice was flat. "My joke earlier, it didn't bother you, did it? You know I was just messing around." He let out a slow breath. "It was fine, just maybe not the best timing, in front of everyone." "Oh, come on, Danny," I said, maybe a little too dismissively. "It's family. They know I adore you. You're being a bit sensitive." He rolled over then, facing away from me. "Yeah, maybe I am. Good night." And just like that, the conversation was over. I lay there, feeling a prickle of annoyance mixed with a sliver of unease. He's overthinking it, I told myself firmly. It was just a joke. I clung to that thought, pushing down the memory of that fleeting look on his face. I had no idea that stupid, careless joke, captured on John's phone, was about to detonate in a way I couldn't possibly imagine. Life went on, but the crack remained. Weeks turned into months. Daniel wasn't outwardly angry, but a subtle coolness had crept in. He started spending more evenings, catching up on work, often on his laptop on the couch while I watched TV alone. His phone seemed permanently attached to his hand, little half-smiles flickering as he texted. "Who are you always texting?" I asked one night, trying to keep my tone light. "Just work stuff," he'd murmur, not looking up. Emily from accounting needed those figures. Emily, a colleague, harmless probably, but the frequency, the quiet smiles, my insecurity, already pricked by his reaction to my joke, started to fester. Was he talking to her about me? About how I'd embarrassed him? I found myself picking little fights. Annoyance simmering just below the surface. Did you forget to take the trash out again? Why do you always leave your socks right there? Little digs, passive-aggressive barbs I wasn't even fully conscious of, trying to get some kind of reaction, any reaction, other than this polite distance. He'd usually just sigh, apologize quietly, and retreat further. Then, about 2 months after the dinner party, my niece Chloe called me. She sounded agitated. Aunt Sarah, have you been on TikTok lately? TikTok? Chloe, I barely know how to use Facebook. Why? Well, Uncle John posted something from Grandma and Grandpa's party. It's getting a lot of views. You should probably look. She sounded genuinely distressed. She sent me the link. The distance between Daniel and me had solidified into a cold war fought with silence and avoidance. My anxiety was high, his withdrawal palpable. I knew something was fundamentally wrong, but I was too scared, too proud, maybe too guilty, to force a real conversation. I clicked the link Chloe sent. My blood ran cold. There it was. 15 seconds of jerky phone footage. Me laughing, wine glass in hand, pointing at Daniel. My voice horribly clear. Wasn't exactly my first choice. Then the brief shot of Daniel's face, that flicker of hurt before his social smile snapped back into place. John had added text overlay. When your wife tells the whole family and the internet, you were plan B, yar marriage goals, toxic yarn red flags. And the comments. Oh dear Lord, the comments, thousands of them. Wow! Divorce him now! Run, King, run! That's not a joke, that's disrespect. My ex-wife used to joke like this, keyword ex. She sounds like a narcissist. Strangers ripping me apart, psychoanalyzing my marriage, flooding the comments with red flag emojis. And John, the idiot, had even tagged my public-facing professional Instagram account when someone asked who I was. My face flushed hot with shame. This wasn't just a family faux pas anymore. This was public humiliation. My first coherent thought was white-hot rage at John. How could he? Didn't he realize? Then cold dread washed over me. Had Daniel seen it? I felt sick. I paced the living room like a caged animal, waiting for Daniel to get home from work. The minute he walked through the door, tossing his keys on the table with a weary sigh, I thrust my phone at him, my hand visibly shaking. Did you see this? John posted this absolute garbage. Daniel barely glanced at the screen. His face was pale, etched with exhaustion. Yeah, he said, his voice utterly flat. Linda from marketing sent it to me this morning. Apparently, it's making the rounds. Daniel, I am mortified. John is such an idiot, I swear I'm going to call him right now and tear him a new one. He held up a hand, cutting me off. His eyes, usually so warm, were cold and distant. Does it matter who posted it, Sarah? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Does it change what you said? Does it change how it looked? How it sounded to thousands of strangers? It was a joke! My voice cracked, desperation mixing with defensiveness. A stupid, awful joke. Why are you acting like this is some unforgivable crime? Why are you letting strangers dictate how you feel about me? He looked at me then, a long, searching look that seemed to peel back all my bluster. Maybe because it didn't feel like a joke, Sarah, he said, each word landing like a stone. Not then, and certainly not now. Maybe it felt like you finally said the quiet part out loud, the part you usually cover up with more jokes. The fight just drained out of me. He wasn't shouting, he wasn't accusing, he was just stating his truth. A truth now amplified and validated by a chorus of anonymous internet voices. The public shame had crystallized his private hurt into something hard and undeniable. My usual defenses, deflection, humor, even anger, felt flimsy, useless against his quiet certainty. He held all the power in that moment, not through aggression, but through his profound, wounded stillness. I felt cornered, desperate. So what? I heard myself sneer, the words tasting bitter. You're running to Emily now? Getting her shoulder to cry on because your wife made a bad joke? The accusation felt cheap even as I said it. He didn't rise to the bait. He just looked at me with infinite sadness, shook his head slowly, and walked past me towards the bedroom, shutting the door quietly behind him. I stood frozen in the hallway, the glow of the TikTok video still illuminating my horrified face on the phone screen. The silence in the house was immense, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. The public humiliation was a nightmare, but the look in Daniel's eyes, the finality in his quiet withdrawal, That felt like the beginning of the end. I hadn't just made a joke. I'd handed the world a weapon to confirm his deepest insecurity, and in doing so, I'd possibly shattered the foundation of our marriage beyond repair. After the TikTok fiasco, things deteriorated rapidly. It was the giant, pulsating elephant in every room, sucking the air out. We moved around each other like ghosts in our own home. Daniel retreated further into work and his phone. I became consumed by suspicion and guilt. My therapist later called it a shame spiral. I knew I'd messed up horribly, but apologizing felt impossible, like it wouldn't be enough. Like he wouldn't believe me anyway after the public pile-on. Driven by a toxic mix of jealousy and desperation, I did track down Emily's number. I ambushed her at a coffee shop near her office, my heart pounding, ready to accuse her of, I don't even know what, home-wrecking? Stealing my husband's sympathy? She looked utterly bewildered, then deeply uncomfortable. Sarah, she said, keeping her voice low, please. There is absolutely nothing romantic going on between Daniel and me. He talks to me sometimes, yes, because he feels like he can't talk to you right now. He feels undermined, especially after, she trailed off, gesturing vaguely. That video thing. He said it just confirmed his fear that maybe you settled, that you don't truly respect him. She looked genuinely sorry for him, and for me. Honestly, I think he's heartbroken. Her words cut deeper than any accusation could have. He wasn't seeking romance, he was seeking refuge. Refuge from me. The weight of my actions, my careless words amplified into a global spectacle of disrespect, pressed down on me. I should have gone home right then, swallowed my pride, and begged Daniel for forgiveness, tried to understand the depth of his hurt. But I didn't. Shame is a paralyzing thing. Instead, I retreated further into myself, letting sarcasm and defensiveness be my brittle armor. I remember a specific moment from years before, long before any of this. We were painting our bedroom, a hideous shade of peach the previous owners had chosen. We were laughing, splattered with beige paint, our much calmer choice. Debating pizza toppings. Daniel had dabbed paint on my nose, and I'd retaliated, chasing him around the room with the roller. We collapsed onto the drop cloths, breathless and laughing, his arm around me. See? He'd grinned. Even boring beige can be fun with you. That memory, the easy intimacy, the shared laughter that built connection instead of tearing it down, felt like it belonged to different people. The silence over dinner wasn't new, but that night, it felt surgical. Daniel had cooked his usual midweek pasta, a dish we'd made 100 times together, once with wine and laughter. Now it tasted like cardboard. I was halfway to the sink with the dishes when his voice stopped me cold. Sarah, sit down. Not a request. A command. I turned. His face was calm, but his knuckles were white where they gripped the edge of the table. This isn't working, he said. No build-up, no preamble, just that. I'm done pretending like it's just a phase or a rough patch. We don't talk. We tiptoe. And I keep wondering how many years of my life I have to spend being the backup plan in my own marriage. My heart stuttered. Daniel, that's not fair. He raised his hand. No, you don't get to play fair now. Not after that joke. Not after thousands of people watched you call me Plan B with a smile on your face. It was a goddamn joke, I snapped. And that's the problem, he exploded, voice suddenly sharp. It's always a joke. You weaponize humor like it's harmless, like it doesn't land. But it does. It lands right here. He jabbed his chest with his thumb. Every damn time. And I let it slide for years because I thought, this is just who Sarah is. But that video? That was my wake-up call. That wasn't a joke. That was truth disguised as sarcasm. I stood there, trembling, fury and humiliation tangled in my throat. So what, you're walking away because you finally grew a backbone and read a few TikTok comments? No, he said, low and cold. I'm walking away because you won't change. Because the only time you feel sorry is when someone else tells you should be. He leaned forward, voice like steel. You didn't just humiliate me. You validated every fear I never said out loud, that I was boring, that you settled, that you never saw me as enough. I opened my mouth, but he cut me off again. And don't you dare say okay just to seem graceful. Don't do the noble exit. You should fight for this, but you won't. Because deep down, you know I'm right. You know you stopped showing up for this marriage a long time ago. I just finally stopped covering for it. I sat, stunned. My defenses shredded. No flippant comment could save me now. The gravity of what I'd done, not just the joke, but the years of slow erosion, crashed down like a roof caving in. I'll contact a lawyer next week, he finished, standing. You can have the house. I just want my peace. And with that, he walked out of the room, leaving me surrounded by cold pasta, broken pride, and the deafening echo of the one truth I never wanted to hear. I hadn't just lost him. I'd driven him away, one joke at a time. The divorce was achingly civil. Lawyers, paperwork, dividing assets. Daniel moved out into a small apartment across town. The house, our home, suddenly felt cavernous, echoing with the ghosts of laughter and whispered conversations. Friends rallied, offering sympathy and casseroles, but the loneliness was profound. In a particularly low moment, I reached out to Ryan, that old flame. We met for coffee, then dinner. It was a desperate attempt to feel something, anything, other than the gaping void Daniel had left. But it was like trying to warm myself by a painted fire. Ryan was still charming, still exciting, but also still self-absorbed and unreliable. It only highlighted the quiet, steady qualities I'd taken for granted in Daniel. After a couple of awkward dates, I knew it was a dead end, just another way of avoiding the real work I needed to do. That's when I bought a cheap spiral notebook and started writing. Everything poured out. The joke, the shame, the fights, the divorce, and all the ugly truths I'd buried. Some nights the ink blurred with tears. Other nights I just stared at the page. I started therapy with Dr. Patel, who saw right through my deflections. "When are we going to talk about your choices?" she asked once. And slowly, I did. The sarcasm I used to avoid feeling, the fear I'd settled, the guilt of hurting the one person who truly loved me. Healing was messy, but I kept at it. I reconnected with people, focused on work, volunteered at a women's shelter, and I kept writing. Eventually, those pages became a manuscript. On Dr. Patel's encouragement, I gave it a title, The Joke That Broke Us, and sent it off. To my shock, someone said yes. Holding the finished book in my hands felt surreal. It wasn't about seeking fame or fortune. It was about closing a chapter, about turning pain into something tangible. Then came the second, completely unexpected twist. Miriam Gray, yes, the Miriam Gray, the incredibly respected author and blogger who turned her own widowhood into a platform for resilience and rebuilding, especially for women our age, somehow got a copy. One morning, my email and social media exploded. Miriam had featured my book on her popular YouTube channel. She sat in her cozy book-lined study, holding my book, looking directly at the camera with those empathetic eyes. "I want to talk about Sarah Thompson's book today," she began, her voice calm and measured. It's a raw and often uncomfortable read about the slow erosion of a marriage, sparked by a careless comment but fueled by deeper issues of respect, communication, and the devastating impact public judgment, she glanced meaningfully, clearly referencing the viral element, can have on private pain. What struck me most, she continued, was Sarah's unflinching honesty about her own role in the breakdown and her difficult journey towards accountability. This isn't just one woman's story. It's a powerful conversation starter about how we treat the people closest to us, even in jest. The comments section under the video became a phenomenon. Thousands of women, mostly in their 50s, 60s, and older, poured out their own stories. My husband constantly makes jokes about my spending. I dismissed my wife's career ambitions as a hobby for years. I see now how damaging that was. Thank you, Miriam, for sharing this, and thank you, Sarah, for your courage. This hit so close to home, the casual disrespect disguised as humor. It was overwhelming. This sudden, vast community of shared experience, this validation that my specific, painful story resonated. It didn't lessen my guilt, but it made me feel less alone in the human capacity to mess things up profoundly. The official book launch was a low-key affair at a neighborhood bookstore. Friends came, my supportive sister, John was conspicuously absent, thankfully. Dr. Patel beamed from the back row. It felt warm, encouraging. Daniel wasn't there. I told myself I didn't expect him, that it would be too awkward, but I still scanned the faces, just in case. He wasn't. A few weeks passed. The ripple effects from Miriam Gray's video slowly subsided. I was finding a new rhythm, writing occasional articles, volunteering, having quiet dinners with friends. I felt settled. Not perfectly happy, maybe, but grounded in my new reality. The sharp edges of grief for my marriage had softened, though the scar remained. Then, one Thursday afternoon, I checked the mail. Bills, junk mail, a catalog, and a plain white envelope. My name and address written in Daniel's unmistakable neat block printing. My breath hitched. My hands started to shake. It felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I walked back into the house in a daze, clutching the envelope like it might either explode or dissolve. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had the separation talk, and stared at it for a long moment. Finally, with trembling fingers, I slid my thumb under the flap and opened it. Inside, a single sheet of lined paper, filled with his handwriting. "Sarah," it started. No preamble. I debated whether to write this. I wasn't sure what I wanted to say or if you'd even want to hear from me. But I read your book. My heart squeezed. Miriam Gray mentioned it, and curiosity got the better of me. It was honest. More honest than I expected. Reading your side, your thought process, the journey you went through after, it answered some questions I didn't even realize I still had. Tears pricked my eyes. I read on, my vision blurring slightly. It wasn't easy to read, obviously. Some parts were incredibly painful, reminders of where we failed, but Sarah, something good came out of it. You remember Mark and Lisa Peterson from down the street? Of course. Married 35 years, seemed solid as a rock. Apparently, they were having a really hard time. Lisa saw Miriam's video and got your book. She gave it to Mark. He told me last week it was like a light bulb went off for him. He said reading about the joke and its fallout made him realize how many times he'd dismissed Lisa's feelings with just kidding over the years. They started talking, really talking, for the first time in ages. Your honesty helped them, Sarah. It gave them a starting point. A sob escaped me then, a raw mixture of pain and unexpected gratitude, something salvaged from the wreckage. My mistake, my painful journey towards owning it, had somehow helped someone else avoid the same path. The letter continued. Seeing you take ownership, seeing the work you've clearly done, it takes courage. I know that wasn't easy. And I want you to know, I see it. I won't lie. The past few years have been hard, finding my own way again. But I'm okay now. I've found a measure of peace. Then came the final paragraph, the words I both dreaded and needed to hear. I'm not coming back, Sarah. Our story is finished, and that's okay. We had good years, and I choose to remember those too. But I am proud of the person you fought to become. I wish you peace. He simply signed it, Daniel. The finality of I'm not coming back landed like a gentle but decisive closing door. The last stubborn ember of foolish hope flickered and died. But surprisingly, the overwhelming feeling wasn't devastation. It was release. His acknowledgement, his pride, the unexpected gift of knowing my painful honesty had fostered healing for someone else. It shifted the entire narrative in my head. It wasn't just my failure anymore. It was a completed arc. His words, devoid of anger or blame, granted a clean, respectful closure that no court document ever could. I folded the letter carefully, tears streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of grief, yes, but also of gratitude and a profound, quiet peace. He had released me, and in doing so, allowed me to fully release myself. The chapter was well and truly closed, written and acknowledged by both authors. So, that's where I am now, still in the same suburb. The lawns haven't changed, but I have. I think before I speak. I write. I volunteer. I keep moving forward. Daniel's letter is in a box, not a wound, just a quiet reminder. I don't know if love will come again, and that's okay. I've stopped trying to rewrite the past. I just try to live better in the present.